Welcome to People Love Process. In this movie, I want to showcase how to create simulated vector halftones all within Adobe Illustrator. Now, to speed up the process, we'll also use a free script for Adobe Illustrator to improve and refine our results. You've probably heard the saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Or teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Kind of my teaching philosophy is pretty much the same. So in this movie, instead of just giving you halftone assets you can use, I am going to do that, by the way, I'm going to also show you how you can create any halftone you may need. This is going to be a fun and very practical one, so let's dive right into it. Now, before I walk you through creating vector halftones in Illustrator, I first want to show you how you can create what I would call an authentic halftone in Adobe Photoshop. So you can start in Illustrator. Here we have a gradient going from black to white. If we go to the gradient palette, you can see it's here. And if we select the gradient tool, this is how the color is gradating. Now, this is an RGB black because you don't want to copy default black from Adobe Illustrator into Photoshop because it won't be a true dark black. It'll read as a dark gray and it messes up halftones. So make sure you're using an RGB equivalent color. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me double click into this and open it up. You can see this color is equivalent of an RGB black. So if I go up here and go here and I go RGB, it's a perfect RGB black. So it's going to convert accurately. So you want to use that to create a gradient like this. We'll just copy it. And now we're just going to switch over to Photoshop. So I'll do that now. And now we're in Photoshop. All I'm going to do is paste, and we'll paste it as, we don't need a smart object, pixels is fine. So we'll paste it in place like this. And now all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and it looks like I might have this just a little sliver like there. We'll go over and trim that because we don't need that dead space. So I'll go ahead and isolate it like this. Here's a kind of something I do all the time. It used to be a lot easier to select in Photoshop. Even though this doesn't have this area, it'll still crop the way I want. So I'm just going to crop it, just get rid of that sliver. So now that we have this in here, it's RGB. You can see we're in RGB mode. So all I want to do now is I want to take this gradient that I've copied out of Illustrator, paste it into Photoshop, and I want to go ahead and turn it into a halftone. So once it's in, we'll change the mode from RGB to grayscale. And you can go find, flatten, no problem. And by the way, just so you know, let's go to the image size. We're working at 450 pixels per inch. I found for this size, it depends on what your size your end image is. Ours is a little over 2 inches by a little over almost 7.5 inches tall. So if you're doing something larger or smaller, you might set your resolution differently. I always go higher than what I actually need just because I like the results I get better. So now that we've changed it to grayscale and we flattened it, we're going to go to mode again. And this time we're going to select bitmap. And when you select bitmap, it'll bring this up and it'll say, what do you want your output resolution to be? Well, I want it to match, so I'll go 450 still. And then instead of a diffusion dither, which is kind of a cool thing as well, I might need to do something showcasing how I use that within Illustrator, but I create the assets in Photoshop. But on this, we're going to go to halftone screen here. Click OK. It'll bring up another pop-up window, and this is where you have to make a decision. What kind of halftone do you want? It's defaulting to diamond. I want these to be round dots. You can do elliptical dots, elliptical shapes, that is. You can do lines, you can do squares, you can do crosses. We're going to stay with the classic round halftone dot. Frequency is how many lines per inch. This will be how dense it is. And in this case, I think 53 is too much. It'd be nice if there is a preview here and you'd see the preview, but unfortunately they've never added that to this. So, and this feature goes back a long time. I've been doing this with Photoshop since the early 90s when we did a lot of t-shirt prints at a design studio I worked at. Let's go ahead and set the frequency. We'll see what 24 looks like, and we're going to keep it at 45 degrees. All this, just like this, we'll click OK, and you can see how it applies that halftone. Now, that's still a little too small. So I'm going to go Command Z, and we'll go back up here, and we'll just have to redo the bitmap part. This is fine. And on this one, that's a little too much. So we're going to knock this all the way down, and we're going to go, let's see, 24 was way too small. So we're going to go down to 7 dots per inch. That doesn't sound like a lot, does it? So let's go ahead and click OK. We'll leave everything else on, and boom, we have a halftone here. Now, if I zoom in on this, the difference between a vector halftone and a true authentic halftone like we're creating in Photoshop is the halftones that are vector based are just circles. They never change any other shape. It's just circles. But if we zoom in on this one, you can see it starts off as a circle, and then as it starts morphing, it gets into almost a squircle type shape, and then it morphs at a certain point and goes into a negative back into a circle. That's what you don't get when you simulate it. Now, I could have set the resolution even higher on this. So if we go ahead and Command Z again, and we'll go back to bitmap, and even though it's 450, we can res this up even more. So maybe I go to 650 like that, and I click OK. We'll use the same settings. It'll be even tighter. So on this one, I want to save it now so I can demonstrate it in Illustrator. So we'll go ahead and save as. I'm going to select our desktop, and I'm going to call this halftone, and the file format I want to create is a TIFF image, and we'll save it. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to select Mac. You would select whatever you prefer. Everything else is fine. And I'll click OK. So let's go back to Illustrator, and I'll show you how you can use assets like bitmaps within the context of Illustrator. It is really cool. So we'll switch back to Illustrator here, and I'm going to go ahead and place this. So let's go ahead and go to the desktop, select this, place, and I'll just place it right about here. And that's not good. Let's do that. Didn't work too hot. Let's do that again. Just click it once. There you go. That's what I meant to do. Somehow I scaled it. So you can see what this looks like. Now, the nice thing about a bitmap TIFF is once it's placed in Illustrator, if we take this original shape we did here, and let's go ahead, I don't know, let's color it yellow like that, yellow fill. This one, we'll color this a red fill. You can colorize it. All the black pixels colorize to whatever color you apply to it. White is transparent, so if you drag this over, that background shape will show through. That's the beauty of this kind of halftone. But let's go ahead and get rid of the color because I want you to compare it once we take this shape and create a vector halftone. So with this shape selected, we're going to go to the gradient palette, and you have linear gradients, radial gradients, and freeform gradients. We're going to do a linear, so I'm going to apply this linear gradient. We'll go to the gradient tool so we can reorient it. So we'll turn it like this, and I'll put this here. We'll drag this top part up here because we don't want it all the way. In my opinion, I think the gradient tool was easier to use before they updated it to what it currently is. I don't know why they felt like they needed to change it so much, but it is what it is. So sometimes I'll even go higher if I don't want it that much black. I think that looks okay. I might drag this mid-tone down a little bit, something like this. Now, what you want to do is when you're creating vector-based halftones, you never want it to go to full black because if it does, the dots will overlap and you're going to have problems doing what I'm going to show you with the script. And by the way, the script we're going to be using is a replace object script. And so what you want to do is you want to adjust this. Now to adjust this color, go back to the gradient tool, double click on this, and you can see we're using black. We're going to set this for a tint of black, not 100% black. So I'm going to go to about 70. Let's just punch in 70 like that. So it looks kind of gray, and you go, well, I don't want it. I want it to be black. Well, it will be. Once we have this set, though, I'll select this, and now I'm going to go up to Effect. I'm going to go down to Pixelate. I'm going to go to Color Halftone. I'm going to open this up. You'll see some kind of numbers like this. Now, you might not know what Color Halftone is. It's a feature. It's been in Illustrator for a very long time. I'm not sure what version it came about in, but it's been there well over 20 years, I think. So what does this do? Well, you can play with the color halftone because the name implies what it does. It creates a color halftone, and it looks like all the different colors because it has 4 channels. These channels represent cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and you can set those for different angles, and you can get some cool color halftone effects. We're using it, but we want to create a traditional halftone, just black. And so what we want to do is change all of these angles to be the exact same angle. So we're going to use 45 again and punch them in all here, 45 like that. And then up here, we'll determine the radius of the pixels. And so this is the sizing. So for this one, I think we'll do like 38, like that. It'd be nice if there was a preview so you could change it on the fly before you commit to it, but there isn't. So it shows you kind of how old this feature is. They really should have a preview here. Everything like this, in my opinion, should have a preview in Illustrator by now, but it doesn't. So we'll click OK, and this is what you're going to see. Now, if on your screen wigs out, don't worry about it. Just go to View and go Viewing by CPU. If you're using GPU by default, sometimes it'll freak out a little bit. Just change it to View by CPU as I have it set here, and it won't. So you can see this creates a nice halftone, and because we made it a tint, it's still darker as it goes up to the top, but it's not touching these shapes aren't like fusing together much like it is here. So simulated halftone, real authentic looking halftone. This is raster though, it's not vector, and we want to turn this into a vector. So how do you do that? Well, to turn this into a vector, it's going to take a few more steps. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to expand this, because if we go to the appearance panel, you can see it's just a halftone, color halftone effect applied to our vector shape, which is a gradient. So we'll have to go to Object, we'll go Expand Appearance. That'll turn it into a rasterized image now. And now we're going to go to Image Trace. We'll open this up, and we're going to take this image and image trace it. I'm going to pull paths all the way to the right, noise all the way to the left. Click on Ignore White, so any white in this image, it's not going to image trace, and then we can click Trace. Now, I have it set to trace pretty tight, and now if we go up to the control panel, or the control bar, and click Expand, you can see it creates a vector halftone. You might be thinking, well, that's pretty simple. Well, hold on. We have to review some of these things. Let's zoom in and see how well it does on image tracing. Well, not too well. You can see down below, these kind of down at the very bottom kind of look like diamonds. And then it gets up here, it gets kind of weird, and then it turns into a squircle of sorts as it gets to this point. So is this a great halftone? Well, not really. But it did create the vector shapes. So what are we going to do with this? Because, you know, you want something to be a little more precise than this. Well, I'm going to show you, this is the steps you go through. The next thing I'm going to do is just get rid of any of these dots that aren't 100% of circle or based off of a circle. So I'll select these like this. And this is where it can get a little monotonous. So I just go in and just select all these, actually all these right here on this side, all the way down, down to right about there. All of these are bad. So I'm just going to delete them. And let's see, we'll do the same thing. It's probably the same amount. No, it's one more. So just for good measure, I'll get rid of this one on this side. So all we're doing is we're getting rid of those, and I don't think we need this bottom row of shapes, so I'll just delete those. Everything else we're going to leave. Now this is where the magic of scripts comes in. All I'm going to do is go to the ellipse tool here. I'll select a color so you can see it, this magenta, and I'll just draw a perfect elliptical shape like this. All I'll do is I'll select this, copy it to my clipboard, Command-C, select this group of objects that was image traced off of the color halftone we created. And now with that selected, I can go to File, I can go down to Scripts, I can go to our Replace Items and click on it. And as long as you have these settings set up inside of Illustrator, by default, I believe this is what the settings will look like. And if you just run it like this, it won't work the way I'm going to show you. So you want to have Replace Items in Group. What does that mean? That means the object in the buffer, they're calling it a buffer. On a Mac, it's called a clipboard. The object in the buffer clipboard is going to replace all the items in the group. That means all these items selected. We want it to fit to the element size. So if it's a bigger one, it makes it bigger. If it's a smaller one down at the bottom, it makes it smaller. And we want it to align symbols by the registration mark. That is the center point of this circle, this elliptical shape that we copied to the clipboard. With those 4 things selected, and we'll use the same setting for each time, we'll click OK. And it does what a computer does. It runs a script, and boom, it replaces all of them. And if we zoom in on these are all perfect circles. Look how awesome that looks. So all I have to do to fix the ones we had to delete is I would just click into this group. I would select all of these going all the way down to the length we had on the ones we removed, like this. Goes all the way down here. So we'll select all those. I'll select this one just to help us register them. I'll Command-C, Command-F to copy them. And then because I have Smart Guides turned on, if I hover over an anchor or on a path, it tells me I'll use that to drag over and register like this. I can get rid of that. I can go ahead and go to this side now and do the same thing. And this is just craftsmanship. If you didn't mind losing those 2 rows on each side, you wouldn't have to do this, but I want it to kind of be the same. So I'll select these on this side, Command-C, Command-F, hover over this anchor, drag it over, snap it to register them into place, select the extra, get rid of it. And now we have this nice vector-based halftone. All the dots are perfect. And by the way, this is just a group. So if you wanted to color it, I think it always works best to turn this into a compound path. And then that way you can colorize this whatever you want. Maybe you want it a brown like that. So that's how you can create a color halftone in vector format. Let's do a few more just so you can get used to this. So we'll select this shape. I'll go to my graphic styles because I have this already created. Now I'll go back to effect. We'll go back to pixelate, color halftone. It'll remember our 45 degrees. We just need to punch in a different number. So maybe we do 33 this time. Click OK. And now we can go to object. We can go expand appearance. We can go back to image trace. Image trace it tight, click on ignore color, which is white. We're telling it to ignore. Image trace it, expand it. now that we have all these, we can zoom in and decide. And by the way, we can reuse this same shape. It doesn't matter what size this is. It just takes it as the perfect image and replaces all the objects. This one, again, you'd want to clean up as you go. So on these ones, I don't think these look great because they're not the whole image like that. And down here below, we'll just leave those. You can see how bad they look. They don't even look, that's nothing close to being a nice halftone. But we're just going to leave those and see if it'll fix that and just register it with a perfect elliptical shape. So again, we'll copy this to the clipboard, select this, go to File, Scripts, pull down to the Replace Items, use all the same settings, and boom, it replaced all of those with perfect circles. So instead of those really bad shapes at the bottom, we got nice circles showing up down there. So although on this one, I probably shouldn't have used some of those shapes because you can see some of these circles, these should all be the same size, but this one and this one isn't. So you have to pay attention to that when you're creating these. So on this one, I'd probably just get rid of this row like that. So that's how this script works. It really does work kind of cool. And so how would you use a script like this? What would you use it on? Well, maybe we take this, copy it. Let's turn on this layer here. So I have these eyes right here, and maybe I want to paste this. We'll go ahead and sample our orange color like that. And actually, since I have Smart Guides turned on, I'll hover over this anchor, snap it to the centers like that. I think that looks pretty good. I'll make a copy of this one, drag it over to this side like that. I'll take this eye shape like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and unite these. Where did I put my Pathfinder? Oh, do I not have it open? Maybe I don't have it open. Oops, didn't have it open. Okay, let's go ahead and unite it like that. I'll go ahead and bring it to the front, and I'm just going to mask these in place like this. So you could do something like that. It's kind of like he's all caffeinated, Mr. Coffee Guy. So there's a lot of different things you can do. But I want to show you another way you can think about doing halftones, because it's not just like that. What if it's a more kind of free-flowing type of shape and you want to create a halftone? Like I want to put a nice halftone on the back here. So you could do that by just creating vector objects like this. And I have this blue one to define the back edge of the shrimp here because I want to pay attention to where those dots fall. But if I select these are just strokes. And what I want to do is I want to create a blend between these two strokes. So I'm going to select this, go to the color we have here, and I want to select 55%. And on this one, I'm going to go swatches and make this a white. I'll select both of these. Now we're going to go ahead and blend this. And to blend, you just go Option Command B, and it'll blend those shapes like this. And then you can go to the shape blending tool here and go to specified steps. And I think that's pretty good. If you wanted to be even safer, you could kind of push it over the top 200. It'll just give you this illusion of continuous tone like that. I think that's fine. So now all we have to do is select this, and we need to rasterize it. So we're going to go to Object, and we're going to click on Rasterize. And we don't want it CMYK. We want this set to be grayscale. And we don't want to use the default 300. I want to put in my own. And again, I'm going to bump this up to 450, a little higher than what I think we need. like that. And I think everything else we can just leave by default. Make sure the background's white. Click OK. And we've created an image like this. Now that we have this image, I'm going to scale this. And this is where it might seem a little unintuitive, but it's one, so you can see it, and two, just to control the halftone a little better. We'll go like this, and I'll go back to Effect. I'll go Pixelate, Color Halftone. It'll remember the angles. We just have to punch in the size. So on this one, I want it to be 44. And click OK. So you can see the halftone it's created there. Now we'll go ahead and expand that effect because it's just an effect right now, like this. And you can see it's kind of cutting off this side. That's okay. We won't need to really worry about that. And now we're going to image trace it. So I'll go to the image trace window. I'll set these to the same ones. Click on Ignore so it ignores the white within this image. And now we'll go ahead and click Trace. And we'll click on Expand. And again, even though it's larger and we traced it larger, it's a little better quality, but you know, you're going to get stuff like that, which looks kind of horrible. So we can improve that. So let's go ahead and zoom out. We'll take this. Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll take the elliptical shape that is. We're going to draw elliptical shape here. And you can do this any color. I'm just doing it magenta so you can see when it changes. And we'll copy it to the clipboard. And now we'll select our group of images here. And we're just going to go to File, Scripts. I'm going to place down to Replace Images, use all the same settings. And it's replaced all of those like that. I can get rid of this one now. I'm just going to go ahead and size this back down to what we originally had. I'm going to color it. The color we have on the shrimp is this orange, but I have a shading hue here like this. And actually first, let's go, our appearance, it's a group. So we're going to change that to a compound. Make sure it's the shading hue like that. And now I'll take this. I'll go to the layer above it. I have a nice mask. And I'm going to select that with the halftone. I'll mask it into place. We can get rid of the guide here. And now I'll go ahead and copy this. We'll go back to our original design, paste it in place. Then I'll go to transparency and set this layer to multiply. And it just adds a nice little aesthetic to our design. So if you want to do something that's curved or on an irregular type of shape, just think of different ways you can blend. The gradient tool isn't the only way you can blend. You can blend with shapes, doing shape blends, and get the same result using pretty much the same type of effect. Let's jump to another design. We're going to start with the skull, but we need to prep it first. The skulls are white, so we want this ultimately to be white. Let's go ahead and just make it this color. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to go offset. And I'm going to punch in 15 points. And we can go round like that. And it gets us pretty close. Let's go to graphic styles because I want this to be an outline so you can see what's going on. You can see it like creates this. We don't want that. We don't want these inner parts of the eyes, so I'll select those and delete them. But I'm going to show you a really cool plugin that just saves me so much time on stuff like this. I'm going to go here and go to the scissor tool, and I'm just going to cut it there. And I'm going to cut it there, take this inner part, get rid of it. Now, if you wanted to fix this, you could take your pen tool, click, and you'd have to adjust it to make it look nice. Well, here's a really cool plugin. It's by Astute Graphics again. So I'm just going to click into, here it is, the extend path. And I'm going to extend this one over to there. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and cut it here, take this one, retract that little handle poking out there, and extend this one to snap onto this one. Then I can just direct select this, go Command J to weld it together, select these two, Command J, and if I wanted to be really anal, I could select this and go Smart Remove here and get rid of that. So now I have a nice outline that's all fixed, and it just makes the process so much easier to do that kind of setup. So I would go ahead and fill this one with black. We don't need the outline. That way this can stay white because it's a skull and it makes sense being white. And then we'll do one more offset from this. Offset path, we'll do the same like that. And maybe this one ultimately is like a gray like that. Now, that has nothing to do with halftones. I just want to, I don't think some of Astute's tools get as much credit as they deserve, such as the Extend Path tool. I use that just so much. It works so great. So I think on this one, we'll go ahead and color this instead of gray. We'll color it like that. So what are we going to use this for? Well, we want to create a radial gradient. So I'm going to turn on this, and you can see we can go ahead and close this. We'll close image trace. You can see we have a large radial gradient, or radial shape here. And if we go to the gradient palette, we'll select on the gradient here, and it applied it to the path. We don't want it on that. I don't know why anybody would use it on a path, but it can be put on a path if you want. Now we want it to go the opposite, dark to light. So on the gradient, they have this flip, so you can just click it and it'll flip it around. Now, if I zoom in on this gradient and I go to the gradient tool like this, at times it might look like it kind of truncates that nice gradient. If so, just pull the mid value the opposite way, and it usually resolves it. Not always. Sometimes it looks fine, but sometimes it looks like there's a cutoff, or it kind of comes to, you can detect a step, and it always looks better if you just adjust the middle gradient. So I think that looks good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and copy this, and we're going to just paste it behind our skull. Command B, so it's behind the skull. We'll go to Effect, we'll go to Pixelate, we'll go to Color Halftone, and on this size, let's see, we'll go a little smaller. We'll lose 45 is fine, and click OK. So it's going to create a halftone there. That looks good. Now we'll go ahead and go back to image trace. Well, first we have to expand it. So Object, Expand Appearance, click on Ignore Color. We'll set this to a tighter setting like that. We'll click Trace, and then we'll expand. You can see we have a lot of anchor points. If I open this, we have 30,000 anchor points. So it is a lot of anchor points. But I want to show you one thing, and that is if we select our skull, let's go ahead and group that. I'm just going to copy that. You can see all these things in the middle are going to fuse together. So when we replace it with a perfect circle, it'll take all the elements that are centric and are fused together and just replace it with one large dot. But I'll show you that in a second. I just wanted to show you it before I do that. So we'll select the ellipse tool. We'll create a perfect shape. Again, we'll color it magenta. We'll select this group of shapes. And now we'll go to File, Scripts, Replace Items. Use all the same settings we've been using. And like a good computer, it just computes, takes that object, copied to the clipboard, and will replace all the objects in our group with that clean, vectorized elliptical shape. Now this going to take a little longer because it's 30,000 anchor points. So it's quite a bit. So it's going to chug along here. And there we go. Oh! You know what? I'm going to leave this mistake in here because I forgot I copied that skull to the clipboard. So that was the actual thing it remembered, and it created a halftone. So this is something I wasn't going to show you this type of thing until a little later, but that's hilarious. Let's go ahead and undo that, and let's that's funny. Okay, let's copy this one. That was a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. So I'm going to copy the elliptical shape. That's hilarious. Copy elliptical shape, select this. And now let's apply what we intended, which is a halftone. But you can see it works with anything you copy into the clipboard. So yeah, this I was wondering why it was taking so long. Going, didn't seem to go that slow on my. Well, that's because I wasn't putting in illustration as the halftone. But that's kind of cool. So you could think of different ways of using that if you wanted to as well. So there you go. Here's the perfect halftone. Now, now I should have done it in this order, and then I wouldn't have ran into that problem. If I take this and I just kind of copy it, you can see how it just replaced the inside, which is all those dots fused together with one large dot. But because the skull's there, this is going to look fine. So anyway, you got to see a bonus there that I never intended. So what would we do with this? Well, let's turn on these layers here. Again, I think this background shape here, if I select this, and we go to the appearance panel, you can see I turned it into a compound. So again, I'd probably colorize this red, and then I would go in on this halftone, colorize that yellow like I had it. But maybe you didn't want it yellow. If you wanted this to also be red like that, this is how you can create a cool radial effect. So I just wanted to show you, yes, you can do linear. Yes, you can do freeform. And yes, you can actually do radial like this. And again, it replaces all those circles like that. And I think on this design, it'd look good if we put a little detail on the skull. Let me walk you through one last one, and then I'll show you the assets included in the exercise files. So maybe you're working out a typography design like this. All you would have to do if you want to add some nice halftone, maybe this can be a t-shirt. So obviously having vector art that's nice and clean is going to work best. So you could create a gradient like this. You could take this and copy that to the clipboard. Actually, first, let's go ahead and select this and go to Effect, Pixelate, and Color Halftone. 45 is fine on our settings. For this one, I want the dots a little smaller than what we've been doing, so we'll do 28. Click on this. That looks good. Now that this is set, we'll go to Object. We'll go Expand Appearance. Now that we have that, we want to image trace it. So we'll select this. We'll go Ignore White. We're going to pull this that way, pull this way because we want this to be higher resolution. And we'll click Trace, click Expand in the control bar like this. Now, if you want to, you could go in and clean these, but because of what we're going to do, we don't need to worry about that. Actually, we do want to do that. Otherwise, it will replace the perfect circle with like these little flecked artifacts. So it's always a good habit to, clean these up. Don't be afraid to zoom in. That's what I should have done, like that. Then you can just drag select this. Get rid of everything. Drag select these at the bottom. We don't want those. And we'll get rid of these as well. And we'll do these ones. Now that I did that skull, I didn't even do that when I was like, I always test stuff to make sure it's not a train wreck when I go to record a movie, but I didn't run into that. And now I'm like going, I could have thought of something I could have done with that. And maybe you can too. So now that we have this object kind of cleaned up, we'll select this, copy it to the clipboard. Now that we've done that, we can get rid of that. We'll select this, go to File, go Scripts, and go down to Replace Items. Click OK. Boom, replace it with nice, perfect halftones like that. And I think we're going to select this. I'm going to go ahead. If you go to Appearance, it'll be a group, so I'll change it to a compound. And on this one, I want it to be this nice dark orange like that. Let's go back to Layers. I made an inset of our type, and I'm going to use that to just mask it like this. And that's how I create a design like that using halftone that would work great for screen printing on a shirt like this. So within the exercise files to this course is a vector halftone set. So you can use these any way you want. So again, if we take, let's go ahead and zoom in on this one up here. Again, it's important because you're going to run into these shapes that are just not a full circle or not have enough missing that if it tried to register the perfect with a perfect elliptical shape with that, it's just not going to look that great. So you'll want to go in and select these artifacts and just delete them before you run the script like that. And if you have a section down here that you think is getting a little too small, let's say you thought this was getting too small, you could just select all those, get rid of them. But these artifacts on the side, you definitely wouldn't want those like this. Then again, select your elliptical shape, copy it to the clipboard, select your group like this. And by the way, let's zoom in. You can see this one is anything but perfect. So that's why we're doing this. So we'll select all of these, group them, go to File, Scripts, Replace Items. We'll use all the same settings we've been using since the first one. And you get a really great halftone set like this. Obviously on this one, I'd want to colorize this like a black color. We don't need that. So since we did do that accidental skull halftone, you can do that. It doesn't have to be dots, much like what I showed you in Photoshop where you could do lines or diamonds or oval type of shapes. You can do the same thing in Illustrator. So if we select this star shape and I copy it to the clipboard, select this image trace that we created with color halftone and go to File, go Scripts, and go Replace Items, it'll replace all these shapes. Instead of a perfect elliptical shape, it'll replace them with stars. So you can get some really cool effects like this. So it doesn't always have to be elliptical shape. It could be a star. It could be an illustration of sorts like this. So it's really cool, really flexible how you can use this. And it gives you results that are, what's nice about it is they're nice and precise. Now, within the exercise files for this course, you're going to get this entire set. So here's vector halftones. These are a little smaller. Here's ones where they get a little bigger. Here's another one where it gets a little darker, both small and large. So these you can take and move forward with. Now, Adobe seems to be all in on AI-driven features at the expense of a true creative process. That's my opinion. And I'd rather they use AI technology to automate functionality like this in Adobe Illustrator. This is all something AI could do in a split second and perform it impeccably, and that would actually be helpful. Creating these methodologies where create a shape and boop, it creates your art for you, that's just lazy. That's not a creative process. That's a crutch. So they could do that, but in my opinion, the engineers who code Adobe Illustrator don't use it enough to realize this level of detail in their own app. That's also my opinion. And the only way to do it precisely in vector form requires a custom script someone created outside of Illustrator. And it's a good thing they did, because it does a very good job and it doesn't cost anything to utilize it. It's a free script. Now, this script and the vector halftone set I shared are all included in the exercise files, and you can access these using the link in the description below. Now, I should point out, along with the information, I show you where to install the scripts, whether you're on PC or Mac, and I also provide a link to where you can get other scripts, where I got this script from, and download those and give those a try as well. We're going to be going over more scripts in an upcoming movie shortly, but I wanted to show you this one because Halftone is always something designers love to work with. Thank you again to those who have become members of this channel. Your support helps me to grow this channel. I appreciate your interaction in any way, be it a like, a share, a simple comment on a post, because it helps me to continue producing original creative projects I can share with you. Until next time, thank you for watching People Love Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you to improve your own creative process.